like you and me. That's how good this C64 Coupe is. Hey guys, welcome back to Remove Before Race. Now AMG have got all the new GT facelifts under lock and key until next year. So I had to enlist the help of a certain reformed thief and his talkative friend to get a car out and get some info to you guys. I hear he's an Avenger now as well, you know. Thanks for your help, Ant-Man. So guys, today we're going to talk about the facelift to the entire GT two-door family. I'm going to go all the way from the normal GT to the new flagship AMG GTR Pro. But it's only going to be a first look because I hope to drive these cars next year. So you guys might remember that the GT has had a facelift before, but it was a very minor one. And it happened when the original GTR came out, because if you remember the original GT, it had more of an SLS-like look to it with the single bar grille in the front. And it's kind of that transition to the new design that then was brought across by the GTR with its Panamericana Grille, or now known as the AMG specific grille, out of the GT3 racing series. So the GTR powered up the rest of the GT family and indeed the 63 AMGs with this new hit of AMG design, especially in the front. But the GT family itself didn't really get much of a facelift when that happened. It was just the Panamericana grille in the front end. The interior and the rest of the bits basically remained the same, apart from a slight power bump. But now, 4 years later from the original GT, this facelift has brought enough changes that we can genuinely call it a big change. And we'll get into all of those straight away. As you can see, the first thing that hits you are the new light clusters, which look exactly like the ones that you see in the GT four-door. And this is all done now. You'll see a theme here where AMG are trying to bring the two-door more in line with the four-door version. And I love these light clusters, A, because of that connection, but secondly, it just makes the whole front end look sharper because of that light design. One thing I'm quite pleased about is that the entry-level simple AMG GT gets a lot of unique bits as well. So of course it gets that basic front end lift with the lights, but now it gets unique lightweight wide-spoke design wheels, which I really like the look of. And when you go to the rear of the car, you see that it's got now the round twin pipes that you get in the entry-level AMGs. And all of it together gives the AMG GT its own kind of distinct character, where before it kind of felt like the poor cousin. But of course, there's some updates now to the GTS and the GTC. I'm going to concentrate on the GTC. It's confusing enough that we have a GTS and a GTC. I wish around the world we just had GT and GTC like the US will now have. Anyway, I digress. So the GTC gets quite the update in the rear. You'll notice the quad rear pipes, just like we have in the AMG GT four-door. Again, bringing that whole family back in line. But that's not all. We actually get some unique wheels finally for the GTC, which look really good. So they're these 10-spoke wheels finished in either titanium, or you can get them in black. So again, everything linking a bit closer to how it is in the rest of the GT family. But that's not all. You can also get that Magno brilliant blue color out of the GT four-door now in the normal GTs as well. And how good does that look? But imagine how good it would look in an AMG GTR. Oh, that looks special. So the GTR itself, it's probably the least affected out the lot because there's no differences really on the rear. It's just the light clusters. But with the GTR, I have seen spy shots of a Roadster version flying around. So I think that we might end up getting one of those next year, which is quite cool. But that brings us to the main event of the GT family now. And that is the car that has been influenced by the GT3 and the GT4 racing experience that AMG have built up over the last few years, being brought back into the GTR, creating the flagship AMG GTR Pro, a limited numbers car. And how insane does this car look? It's taken that already aggressive, I mean, the GTR is one of the most aggressive cars on the road anyway, and it's made it even more crazy. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what AMG have changed, because there was 4 areas that they really concentrated on. One was suspension, the other was aerodynamics, weight saving, and looks was a big factor as well. We'll talk more about the dynamics and the suspension when we get to the actual drive of the car, because there's no real point in talking about that now. But just to give you a quick overview, in the suspension, they have adjusted quite a few things. So we've got now a carbon adjustable torsion bar at the front. We've also got adjustable suspension in terms of the rebound and compression, just like I have in my C63 Black Series. All of this being done to allow a track driver more adjustability in the car. We've also got the addition of AMG dynamics that you've seen in our recent reviews of the C63 Facelift and in the A35. But again, we'll talk more about that when we go on the actual drive. But what you really want to talk about is that new aero. So let's have a look at all of these new changes here. First of all, that front end, how aggressive and insane does this front look? You've got a whole new lower half with the intakes, with a completely redesigned front intake here. You can see just how aggressive that looks. Then you've got the carbon flicks on the side, the lower ones linking nicely into the front lip. Then you notice how much exaggerated that front lip is. It's come out even more than the GTR, and it's all carbon and held in place with these two aluminium parts, which remind you of the Evo 2 or something out of Motorsports, which is a lovely link to AMG Motorsports right there. So that entire front, so much more aggressive, so much more motorsport tuned, but it doesn't end there. We come around the side and you can see the louvres on top of the front wings, again helping ventilate the wheel arch and stopping the front lift. And then you go along the side as well, and then you see my absolute favorite bit, which is something that is inspired by the AMG Project One aero, and it's that aero element behind the rear arch there, which looks absolutely amazing. How cool is that to have a link to the Project One hypercar in this Pro version? The roof of the car has also got a brand new carbon fiber roof with a dip down part in the middle, so it's redesigned. And the other bit on the rear is the big rear wing has got an extra gurney spoiler lip on the back, and it's actually now attached via aluminium milled brackets rather than what the GTR had. Again, this is something out of motorsport. And of course, you've got that lovely GTR racing flag badge on the back, which I absolutely love the look of. It looks so cool. Now, in terms of the spec you get, this is, I guess, what you would call a launch spec. So it's Magno Selenite Grey with the light green stripes. It looks quite nice. Again, it's inspired kind of by that GT4 racing car. All of this linking together in terms of inspiration. You also get the gloss black carbon ceramic brakes as standard with the white lettering, so that's different. AMG's never done that before. And the RXE graphite grey wheels, which are just like the GTR ones, but graphite. And carbon package 1 and 2 are standard on this car as well, all to do with weight saving, so that's quite good as well. But if you don't like this spec and you want to change it, like I do, the good thing is you get a choice of the whole GTR color palette. So, for example, you could go for Solar Beam Yellow, or maybe the Magno Brilliant Blue, and then those green stripes get replaced by graphite stripes. It's just a shame that we can't change the color of the calipers or the wheels, because you could have made this look pretty exciting, couldn't you? So all those changes together make this car shave 10 seconds off the GTR's ring time. The rest of the power and the specs are exactly the same. Nothing has been done to the engine. So I don't think customers are really gonna see a lot of the benefits of that particular side. But it's nice to see anyway that AMG have prioritized looks as one of their 4 things that they wanted to improve, because sometimes manufacturers can get carried away with doing great aerodynamics but making a car look ugly. Yes, I'm looking at you, McLaren. Whereas AMG and Porsche seem to really hit the nail on the head, making aerodynamic elements look pretty, and indeed Ferrari are ace at that as well. Now, a lot of people are also confused and think that this Pro is somehow a replacement to the Black Series, but it really isn't. The Pro, as I said, doesn't add any more power, and Tobias Moores, the CEO, has confirmed that a Black Series is in the works. So we can expect a completely different car. How they're going to make it more aggressive still, I have absolutely no idea. There's going to be something very special coming with Black Series, I'm sure. But now, guys, I'm going to show you a little bit inside where the big changes are, and it's enough to call this a genuine facelift, as I said. So let's show you those. So, guys, to talk about the updates to the GT family inside, I want to look at the normal pre-facelift AMG GTR, and I want to show you all the bits that have changed from there. And I want you to remember that theme of bringing all the bits from the GT4 door into this car, so that all the 2 doors and the 4 doors look like they're from exactly the same family. And it makes sense, because if you own a 2-door, you want your 4-door GT to convey the exact same design elements. And that's exactly what's happened in this facelift. The biggest changes that the 4-door brought to the GT DNA have now been brought into this 2-door. And the first thing that you're going to notice will be directly in front of you. And that is, of course, the brand new steering wheel that we always tout on the channel, the new AMG steampunk style one, very sort of Hawaii Pagani looking steering wheel. And that comes across the board in the 2 doors now. And of course, in the new steering wheel, you get the awesome new dynamic select switches that we got from the Project One cars into all of the recent AMGs. And it's great to have those here because it's so much easier to change your driving modes than messing around with the old center console over here, trying to find where those buttons are, which was not really that ideal. Now you've got the shortcuts there, and you can customize the ones on the left and change your driving modes with the one on the right, which is just lovely. And you'll see immediately then behind that, the GT no longer has just the analog display. Now it's got the 12.3-inch display out of the C63S, which we reviewed recently. And of course, it's got the Super Sport display, and this is exactly like you find in the C63S. So you get all the different designs like Super Sport, Sport, Classic. Within here, you get the ability to adjust all of the options in front of you and customize the screen as you want it. And of course, now you get all of those animations and upshift animations and stuff that you would like to be in a car like this straight out of motorsport. But we'll delve more into those options when we see the car. Of course, the steering wheel has the touch buttons, which then control the other screen, which is now larger as well. And in that screen, we've got, again, the C63 updated UI, but it is not MBUX in the GT family, just as it's not in the 4-door yet. The new car also gets AMG track pace, as we've seen in all the recent AMGs, which the GTR didn't have before. So you get all your lap times, drag races, etc., all recorded, stored in your driver profile. And then linking to that in terms of UI design and the new system is the trackpad that we have in the center console, which of course links to that, which is great to have. But then suddenly you notice the center console is no longer the same in this car, and it's exactly the same as the one that you find in the GT 4-door with the LED screens here, which change as you press them, and they link to the GT 4-door. The gear selector is now a lot larger, just like it is in the GT 4-door as well, and removing the touchpad has allowed them to do that. And then suddenly you realize the engine start-stop button isn't there anymore because it's been moved right behind the steering wheel as it is in all the other AMG models. So this entire driver zone area is already massively different. And this is why I was saying earlier, this is a lot more of a facelift than the previous little nip and tuck was. It's genuinely brought the GT series in line with all the rest of the AMGs. Whereas before you did feel a little bit down-changed. That being said, however, if we come back to the normal GTR, I don't think someone who owns one of these or the current GT family is going to feel that down-changed by any of these facelift changes, both outside and in. I think they are nice changes if you're buying a new car, but they're by no means a deal breaker for anybody who has this generation. If anything, I quite like the idea of having these analog dials in a car that when it drives feels so analog as well. In terms of the AMG GTR Pro, it's basically identical to the normal GTR inside as well. But I will go into much more detail when we do the full drive next year. So guys, that is your first look at the AMG GT Family facelift. Next year, I'm going to go hopefully on a drive on all of these cars and bring you more in terms of the driving performance and dynamics, the interior and the sound. But until then, I better get this car back before we end up throwing Scott back into jail. So guys, please do like and subscribe as you always do, and I'll see you again next time.